Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1985 action adventure comedy titled The Goonies. Now, The Goonies runs for 1 hour and 54 minutes long. It is directed by Richard Donner. The script was written by Chris Columbus, and no, I'm not talking about the Italian explorer who took a wrong turn. No, it's just by ironic coincidence that his name too happens to be Chris Columbus. He directed and wrote many movies in the 80s and 90s. He was involved with, Home Alone. He was involved with Mrs. Doubtfire. He was involved with all these other, not necessarily kid-friendly comedies, but comedies that have a certain level of adult humor mixed with kid humor type of things. The story was, of course, brought up by Steven Spielberg, who also was the executive producer. Okay, the producers were Richard Donner and Harvey Bernhard, who doesn't get enough credit for his contribution to this cult classic. It was composed by Dave Grusin, although you might hear the Superman theme by John Williams featured in there, especially when Sloth unbuttons his jacket and reveals that he's got a Superman t-shirt. The cinematography was done by Nick McLean, and it was edited by Michael Cohen. And the stars of the movie are Sean Astin, who of course plays Mikey, the leader, and of course, in later years, he actually played Samwise Gamgee in the Lord of the Rings movie. We also have Josh Brolin in his acting debut. Yes, that's right, we have the Marvel Cinematic Universe Avengers villain Thanos in this movie. We have, he plays Mikey's older brother Brand. Then you also have Jeff Cohen, who plays Chunk. He's now, of course, he has kind of stepped out of the Hollywood limelight, but is now working as an attorney for Hollywood actors. And he looks pretty good for his age, And, he's lost a lot of weight, so he's no longer that much of a chunk. Then you have Corey Feldman, who, of course, plays Mouth. And of all the kid actors who are in this movie, he's probably the one who's got the most experience of them all. I mean, he's made tons of movies in the 70s and 80s, even dating back to the time when he was 3 years old. I guess you could say pretty much after The Lost Boys was when his acting career kind of fizzled out. He, of course, joined a rock band, but yeah, he's still sort of in the public spotlight, and now he's kind of almost like a bit of an advocate against child actors in sexual abuse scandals. Part of a bit of a member of the Me Too movement. It's not just female actresses that were involved in sexual scandals, but he's speaking out against child stars who have also felt that pinch. We also have, Kerri Green. She plays Andy or Andrea Teresa Carmichael. She's in this. I haven't seen too many acting roles for her. The other one I could think of was she was in the movie Lucas with, I believe, the other Corey of the group, the two Coreys, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. Originally, Corey Haim was supposed to be Mouth, but I guess due to his schedule, due to scheduling conflicts, Corey Feldman arbitrarily took the role. She was kind of not kept kind of a more low profile in her lifetime. Fine with her. Martha Plimpton is in this. She plays Stephanie Steinbrenner. She also has a great. She's been in a lot of movies in the past. Still going strong today. Jonathan Ki Hoi Kuan, who plays Data. Of course, I remember him from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where he plays the character of Short Round. They got a couple of dead people on our list. No, that's disrespectful. No, all due respects to these two alums. We have John Matuszak, who played Sloth, or his actual name was Lotke Fratelli. Sloth, of course, everybody knows him. Hey, you guys! As, you know, I don't want to label him as a monster, but more or less a gentle giant who suffers from, I believe it's an illness called Collins-Treacher syndrome. But he also may have an assortment of probably some mental health issues. No fault of his own. He was raised in a very abusive family, which of course are the rest of the other Fratelli family members due to his abuse. But he didn't make this is conditioning a setback. In fact, it made him stronger, and he actually became a good guy character. His interactions with Chunk is just pure magical chemistry there. We also have, we can't count out the villains in this movie, too. We have Anne Ramsey as Mama Fratelli. She is one scary bitch, I can tell you that right now. And then we got her other two asshole children, her sons, Robert Davi, who plays Jake Fratelli, a guy who sings bad Italian opera. And then we got Joey Pants himself, Joe Pantoliano, as Francis Fratelli, who wears a cheap hairpiece. Let's not forget about Mikey and Bran's parents. We got Mary Ellen Trainor as Irene Walsh and Keith Walker as Irving Walsh. We also have Lupe Ontiveros, who plays Rosalita. I guess you could say she was helping them move, because apparently Mrs. Walsh was mostly seen wearing a sling. So I love the scenes where Mouth was translating. Well, he was supposed to translate what Mrs. Walsh was saying, but instead he would tell her a different thing, making them believe that Mr. and Mrs. Walsh are sexual deviants who are also in the drug industry. Very funny stuff. Although she is living off of a very badly done stereotype, which may have probably been funny back then, but today's modern day sensitivities, it won't work. Joining us, we have Steve Antin, who plays the part of Troy Perkins, who is this rich douchebag, who of course has an attraction towards Andy, even though Andy thinks he's just a creep. We have Kurt Hanson, who plays Mr. Perkins, the contractor who wants to tear down the Goondocks so that he can make this big, giant country club. We have Michael Paul Chan as Data's father, Charles McDaniel as Chunk's father. And to end the cast, we have Paul Tuerpe, George Robotram, and Keenan Wynn. Plus, we also have cameos from director Richard Donner himself as one of the cops who show up at the end. Nick McLean, the cinematographer, he's Mouth's father, who's a plumber. And we also have stunt coordinator Ted Grossman, also made some cameo appearance, which I don't remember what he was in, but I know he did show up there too as well. So what did I think of this movie? To me, I think The Goonies is one of the most greatest, most treasured films that the 80s had to offer. You get it? You knew I was going to tell some kind of a joke like that, since the movie is about a treasure hunt. So by calling it the most treasured film of the 80s, yeah, I know it's corny as fuck, but at least it's funny. It's a joke. It's a pun. Lighten up, folks. Get a life. It had everything that you ever asked for, from exciting set pieces, and boy, the props were just all over the place. Fun-filled action. Probably one of the most fun, action-packed movies that I've ever had. It's almost like an Indiana Jones type of Da Vinci's Quest type of movie, only this time instead of, experienced adults who are thrill seekers, it's kids, inexperienced. Kids who just sort of depend on their own instincts to try to get themselves to whatever destination it is, while also trying to risk life and limb. Dead bodies. Just the police to let you know, okay, none of the members of the Goonies actually ever die, but there are plenty of dead bodies. From the stiff in the freezer where Chunk was consuming ice cream, to Chester Copperpot, and to One-Eyed Willie and his band of pirates. Kids risking their lives to save their houses from being demolished by greedy contractors. Evil criminals who want the treasure for themselves. And even a lovable, disfigured giant who becomes a likable hero. I mean, what more can you ask for? It's a family film that isn't afraid to add dark scenes to the narrative, and that is why kids and adults love this movie very much. Sure, the movie is a kid's film, but it's not some cheesy 80s or modern day CGI 3D animated movie where the kids still prance around with smiling faces and are flying around all over the place feeling whimsical and jolly. No, these kids are putting their own lives in danger just to save their town from being destroyed by these fuckwads who want to demolish their houses. Because once their houses are demolished, where are they going to go? Well, Data, of course, his parents have plans of moving to Detroit. You want to move to Detroit? That's like practically a death wish to move to Detroit. I mean, it's still to this day has one of the highest criminal records in the United States. I don't know if it's still at that top spot. I think maybe Chicago has took that honor. But and no offense to anybody who lives in Detroit or Chicago. It's not that I'm saying I pity you guys. I mean, where I'm from, I don't live far from Montreal, and Montreal is laden with criminal activity. Maybe not as the extent as New York or Chicago or Detroit or Los Angeles, but it's still there. A lot of big cities are just saturated with criminal activity. Anyhow, Data, of course, everybody is all under that pinch of having their livelihoods destroyed. All just because of greed and capitalism. When you think about it, there's a lot of politics and economics that manifest in this movie. even though it is kind of like subliminally hidden, it is there. These kids are not being a bunch of, like, oh, let's go get some pirate gold stuff so that, we could be rich and we could be successful, we could be heroes. No, they're not trying to be heroes. They're trying to save their houses from these greedy fucks. I mean, they don't give a shit about these kids or their families. No. So so even though this movie is made for kids, it doesn't go as far as to, insult your intelligence. They're not watering it down to make it safe. They're not, I mean, it is some level of politics in it, but it's not like ham-fisted down our throats. But it's a shame there's not more movies like this anymore. Everybody wants to either play it safe or ham-fist things down our throats. That we have to either like it or you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Or they'll cancel you. Or they'll label you with slanderous innuendo. Because that's what modern day sensitivity is about. So, located in the Bay Area of Astoria, Oregon, also known as the Goondocks, by the local kids who live in the area, simply known as the Goonies, a greedy contractor is on the prowl of getting people to sign a petition to have their houses demolished so he can build a golf course on their property. The idea of losing their homes does not sit well with the locals, especially the children like Mikey and Brand, played by Sean Astin and Josh Brolin. The other kids in the area, which include Goonie members Mouth, played by Corey Feldman, Chunk, played by Jeff Cohen, and Data, played by Jonathan Kuan, are also facing the same situations themselves. So, unless they get the money to save their homes, or else they may end up parting ways forever. Including Data going to Detroit. Going to Detroit, I'd rather just be a bum on the street in Portland. But their luck starts to change when the gang stumbles in the Walsh's attic to discover the map that leads to the treasure of the sinister pirate One-Eyed Willie, whose ship was trapped for centuries. And even though One-Eyed Willie, of course, how he got the money, he stole it from the British government. And then he eventually, instead of just sharing the treasure with his fellow pirates, he eventually betrayed them by killing them all and using their bones and flesh to set up booby traps so that nobody could ever touch his gold unless they were able to successfully solve whatever riddles he has in store. I mean, this One-Eyed Willie, definitely, if he wasn't a pirate, he would have been a successful engineer. I mean, he's got all these traps set up for these kids, or for anybody who tried to get his treasure. And then, eventually he was trapped inside a cavern and was never been able to get out, so he eventually just stayed isolated in that cavern forever. So now the treasure is for anyone's taking. But Mikey believes that he and his friends can find the treasure to One-Eyed Willie and retrieve his belongings. It could potentially save their homes forever. Joining them on their quest are the other local kids, a little older characters, including a pretty girl named Andy, played by Kerri Green, her brainy friend Steph, played by Martha Plimpton, and of course Brand, also joins in with them. The kids are determined to finding the treasure and bring it back to their families. But what they don't know was that their quest was not going to be as easy as anticipated. So, of course, posthumously, One-Eyed Willie, who was a very skilled engineer, like I mentioned, kept people from taking his treasure by setting up booby traps that are very capable of killing anyone who isn't careful. Even professional explorers like Chester Cobblepot, who died trying to get One-Eyed Willie's treasure. But our heroes have managed to escape death on numerous occasions. I mean, remember when Data almost got impaled? But fortunately, due to his keen sense of ingenuity and his inventions, he had, of course, the pinchers of peril that helped save his life, which is basically almost like a slinky type device with toy wind-up teeth that you would probably be getting at a dentist. I mean, he's got all kinds of other stuff too, including like an inflatable boxing glove. Oh, and let's not forget slick shoes, where he opens up his Nike sneakers and starts oozing out oil, to stop the Fratellis. I mean, I think I've already just explained all of Data's contraptions. I mean, there were probably a lot of other ones too. Or maybe I mentioned them all in them. Anyhow, who can ever forget the memorable scene where Andy had to play the skeleton bones to get to another side to lead to One-Eyed Willie's treasure. Very important, pivotal role. Who can ever forget that cool, awesome water slide scene? That was fun to watch. In a deleted scene, there was this giant octopus that was terrorizing them, but somehow Data kind of like screwed up the octopus's mind by putting a cassette player in the creature's mouth, which caused him to go haywire. Pretty funny stuff. And this movie, actually, believe it or not, is a lot more darker than a lot of other like kid-themed movies. But then again, back in the 80s, people weren't afraid to put kids into dark situations. These days, everything is kind of played safe. Well, okay, maybe not always. I mean, we have the Stranger Things series where kids' lives are all put in danger. So yeah, and it's not just One-Eyed Willie that's also trying to set these kids back from obtaining their treasure. We also have a group of evil criminals called the Fratellis, led by Mama Fratelli, played by Anne Ramsey, and her two sons, Jake, played by Robert Davi, and Francis, played by Joe Pantoliano. They're also on their trail and will stop at nothing to get the treasure, even if it means to hurt them or worse. They even kidnapped Chunk. I mean, hell, Chunk almost had his life or even his hands taken away, especially when they interrogated him and to tell him all the kinds of details and bad things he's done in his life, like, well, cheating on his history test and stealing his Uncle Max's toupee so he could play Moses in his Hebrew school play, or pushed his little sister down the stairs and blamed it on the dog, and going to a summer camp for fat kids and he got kicked out of the camp because he made a pig of himself and ate everything, or going to a movie theater with fake vomit and started making hacking noises, and then when the fake vomit trickled over the seats, it became a barfathon. There's and then after that, after his stories, they wanted to puree him, but then they got distracted when the bats started coming out from Not the belfry, but from the fireplace, knowing that there is a possibility that Chunk is not telling a bullshit story, even though nobody really ever believes in his bullshit stories. Not even the cops, which makes me actually kind of funny, because one time when he was telling him that his friends are in danger, the passive-aggressive cops, who, like as always, like you would always expect in these comedy movies, to be just a bunch of passive-aggressive assholes, didn't believe in Chunk's story, saying, "Oh, is this one of your stories, Lawrence? Like the time somebody dropped water on these creatures and they started multiplying." Of course, that's making reference to the gremlins, which makes me sometimes believe that the gremlins and the Goonies are from the same universe. I'm just saying, it's a possibility. Or the time when somebody said that Michael Jackson had to use his bathroom. And then Chunk said, okay, Michael Jackson didn't use my bathroom. No, he didn't use his bathroom. Well, actually, he did try to use Chunk's bathroom, but instead he made his way to his bedroom. And when Chunk got into his bedroom, well, never mind. I'm trying to run a clean show here. So I think I better ease up on the pedo jokes. Although they are funny, but they're disturbing. I'm trying to run a clean show, folks. I'm trying to make it PG. I don't want to make it PG-13 or R. Otherwise, I'm probably gonna not let kids watch my video. I'm just saying. Come on, let's run a clean show. So then he was chained next to a gigantic, hideously beastly fellow named Sloth, who, when you first see him at first glance, you're like, holy shit, the Fratelli's left a deranged monster chained to in a cellar. And I bet you probably are led to believe that he's gonna cause evil and havoc towards these kids. But then we realize he's actually not as evil as we think. He's actually a very nice... He's probably, like, of all the members of the Fratellis, he's the one who may look like a monster, but is anything but a monster. And then when you look at the Fratellis, they're the real monsters. You know, this whole, you can't judge a book by its cover moral seems to get esoterically placed in the narrative. And it's true. In some ways, Sloth kind of reminds me of Old Man Marley from Home Alone. I mean, we get fed into this whole narrative that he's this crazed psycho who annihilated people with a snow shovel and then cremated their bodies to use as snow salt for a potential zombie apocalypse. He's been watching too many monster movies. And I don't think anybody would really want to bite into his bullshit. But that's the way how it goes. And I think so. And he eventually became Chunk's friend. And he joined the gang to save them. And to also get revenge on his family after years of abuse. I mean, even when Mama Fratelli tries to soften up to her slothy... Then she starts singing Rockabye Baby, and then all of a sudden he breaks into a scream like, break, fall, and then she's like, I only dropped you once, okay, maybe twice, and then he picks her up, and he drops her into the lake. I mean, sure, it's an adventure that will make for a great story to tell their kids and their grandkids when they get older. I mean, of course, this will probably be an experience of a lifetime they'll never forget, and they'll probably never have after that. The Goonies themselves may look like the typical average kids you see every day in our lives, but in reality they are anything but. They all have rather unorthodox qualities about them that make them unique. You have the leader, Mikey, as the optimist and the most determined to get the treasure, even if it means putting him and his friends' lives in danger. You got Brand, who's the jock of the group, who is annoyed by his brother, while at the same time underneath still has care for him. Then you have Mouth, who's the troublemaker of the group, who's also fluent in Spanish, which helps because Willie's map is in Spanish, but also tells the Spanish housekeeper Rosalita, played by Lupe Ontiveros, that the Walshes are sex-addicted drug fiends. Follow that up, you have Chunk, who is the eternally hungry kid, who's also very clumsy, but shows he also has a heart, especially when he befriends the misunderstood Sloth. And then there's Data, an Asian kid who loves to invent things and is capable of setting traps that the Fratellis also fall for. And to round it off, you have the pretty girl Andy, who's Brand's girlfriend, and Steph, who's Andy's friend, while also loves to throw verbal jabs at Mouth, which he delivers back. Which I actually think there might be some kind of a mutual liking for each other, but you know, they eventually do kindle a bit of some admiration for each other. But no matter what, we all like them. And though their antics might be over the top, they might scream a lot. But then again, when you're putting your life in danger and not knowing what's expected, that's natural. We root for them all the same. But the thing I like the most about this film, or what really makes me enjoy watching the movie, is the feel-good moments. The moments where it's not as crazy and over the top, but just the subtle stuff, too, gives you that feeling of relief. Sure, it might be ironic and coincidental and predictable at times, but just knowing how they barely escaped and saved their lives, which became much more important than any gold, diamond, their friendship. When the caves were starting to blast through and the rocks were starting to fall, and instead of just grabbing rich stuff from One-Eyed Willie's pirate ship, they decide that, you know what, screw it, we'll get it later. Because if you guys get crushed by a rock, there isn't going to be a later. So then they also learned the lesson that friendship means more than any gold, diamond, or emerald. But however, though, there was a payoff in the end. When Rosalita was looking through Mikey's marble bag, she ended up holding some expensive stones that are worth billions, which led to Mr. Walsh tearing the petition. The moment was just pure joy. It was just like one of the best scenes ever. I mean, Mr. Walsh is not on very often, but when he ripped up that contract, it was just pure magical. When I saw the confetti, when I saw the papers crumpled to bits, there's gonna be no more signing ever, forever. When he threw it, it wasn't just crumpled up petition papers or confetti. No, I was visualizing gold coins Because it was that moment that he ripped Mr. Perkins' contract. That means that the Goondocks are saved. And it's all because of Mikey's marble bag and Rosalita's discovery. No pity me, no pity me. Okay, I'm not doing that. But it's these moments are the most precious. The other precious moment was after Sloth received something that he never got before in his life, and that was pure, genuine love from Chunk after he and Chunk got themselves a little bit of a peace offering. No, it wasn't holy bread, but it was a Baby Ruth candy bar. When Chunk threw the candy bar at Sloth, at first you would think he would be pissed off, but he wasn't pissed off. There was just something in his heart that made him all the more stronger. That's right. He felt for the first time in his life love, which is something that his family never gave him. And when he broke those chains and became emancipated from his family's torment, we feel good because he feels empowered. He feels like a free man finally, in more ways than one. Free from being chained in a boiler room. Free from being tortured and tormented by his deranged family. And had embraced something that he never had in his life. Love. And when Chunk at the end said, after the Fratellis got arrested, Chunk said to Sloth, "You're gonna live with me because I love you." And Chunk was like, almost to tears, like, "I love you too, Chunk." And Sloth was a person who, although had a few words to say, it was just such a joyous occasion. Just even talking about it gives me a bit of a tear in the eye. Tears don't necessarily have to come from sadness. It comes from the feeling of joy and happiness. And that finally, Sloth has found that happiness. And that he actually found somebody who out there who loves him. And all I can say is I hope everything works out. I really do. And even though I am older now as I speak, this is truly a time-honored classic that any movie lover can enjoy. It kind of reminded me of my childhood past. And though I may never get it back again, when I watch the movie The Goonies, I get teary. But not in a sad way. Maybe it's sad because I'm an adult and I just don't have that kind of childhood innocence like I used to. But I feel happy because this truly brings me back to that kid inside of me that has been lost for almost 4 decades. And I will continue to watch this movie because, as I said before in the beginning of my broadcast, This is truly a very treasured movie. And I highly recommend you all to see The Goonies if you've never got a chance to. So when all is said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give The Goonies from 1985 a 9.5 out of 10. So I guess this ends my ride review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Carrot Rider saying keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.